Hi, it's Nell with the blog Joyous Garden, and thank you for joining me here today. I'm calling this January Houseplant January because I'm doing videos and blogs all about houseplants, which I've done quite a few of them. So I just wanted to do this video. I'm calling it my love affair with houseplants, which you'll find out about that later on. My experience with houseplants, my background in houseplants, my history with houseplants. So if you're curious about that, stick around. It's a little bit more of a personal video, but not too personal. So first of all, Happy New Year. It is 2019. It's actually the 7th of January, so we're almost into the first full week. Wow. But I just wanted to do this because I'm doing a lot about houseplants now. I've really gotten into them again, and I just want to share my experiences with you. And you're probably like, some of you might be, who is this chick talking about houseplants? So I just wanted to furtherly explain what my background is with or in them. But first of all, I want to show you a couple things that happened in my garden over the past 3 weeks. So let's go check that out first. So here's the first thing that happened. I got this little cactus pot. Well, it's a little pot, but it's a tall pot. I got that planted. I don't like to do too much planting at this time of year because it's cooler. But I did want to get these small cacti in here. So they're all small. You know, they're all going to stay small. I think maybe one will get about 2 feet, and that's just fine by me. So here's the other thing that happened. My bougainvilleas got hit by 2 cold nights. We had one that was 25 and one that was probably 27. So old Barbara Karst is not looking nearly as beautiful as she did in the last video. So I was raised on a small farm in Litchfield County, Connecticut. The population of the town at the time I was born was 892 people. Yes, I'm from a small town. Very beautiful area though, Litchfield County. It's gorgeous. So I have a long history with gardening. This is not about gardening, it's with houseplants. But my dad had a huge vegetable garden that was probably like 20 feet or 30 feet by at least, 50 feet. Grew a lot of our own food, preserved and canned, and also we had had a cold cellar where we stored a lot of the root vegetables. So that leads us into the houseplants. We didn't have a lot of houseplants in the house because it was a farmhouse and the lighting wasn't really wonderful. We probably had maybe in the whole house maybe 6 to 10 plants. But when I was 11 years old, I was either 10 or 11, my dad built a greenhouse off of our dining room from a Lord and Burnham kit. It was a fairly good-sized greenhouse because he wanted to start getting into growing some plants, and mainly he wanted to start all the vegetables and everything in our garden from seed. And that just allowed him to do that really easily. So some of the plants that I can remember in our greenhouse, we had like Wandering Jew, Creeping Charlie, we had quite a few Hoyas, Streptocarpus, Gloxinias, had Gardenia, there were other ones too. A bunch of philodendrons. We had a couple of avocado trees that we put out at our pool in the summer and then brought them into the greenhouse. And also a 3-foot jade, which I thought at the time was so exotic. It got to 3 feet. And it was like, oh wow, that's the biggest jade tree I've ever seen. And then I moved, or jade plant, and then I moved to Santa Barbara years and years and years later and discovered that jades grew as hedges to about 6 feet tall. But I was very impressed by that jade, and my dad bought quite a few plants at Logi's greenhouses, which is a great place. They've been in business forever, and they also have an online store for some cool stuff. And he just got cuttings of things here and there and got into plants. And as he was getting into plants, I was getting into plants too. So that's where my real love with houseplants first started as a kid. So then I went to college and I started in landscape architecture because I thought I wanted to be a landscape architect. But as I got into the program, it was in the School of Architecture, and it was very focused on architecture and not that much on the plants, and I missed the plants, so I took a year off and I switched schools and I started in ornamental and landscape horticulture. So that is, so I took mainly classes for exterior, but there was one whole year of raising ornamental plants. So that's where I got into that. So I just decided I didn't like being at the drawing board, and I wanted to work hands-on with plants. Oh, and speaking of plants, by the way, I'm going to change them off because I'm just going to be talking here. Blah, blah, blah. So this is a Song of India. It's a Dracena reflexa Song of India. And now it's time for a plant change. I completely forgot about the plant change. So anyway, this is one of my bird's nest sansevierias, and it actually has a new baby in the back. So it's doing beautifully. And let's see. Oh yes, my first job out of college was in Boston for an interior plantscaping company, and I was an interior landscape technician, or an interior plant technician, which is a fancy name for someone who maintains plants in lobbies, offices, malls, did the airport. I might be forgetting something, but in public spaces. So I ran around with a big bag. I had scissors, pruners, I had a watering can and a rag, and just made sure that all the plants were maintained and looking good. So as you can imagine, commercial environments are really tough on plants. So that's where I learned what plants really do the best. Now, fast forward 2 years later, and I'm off to New York City, the Big Apple. I worked for a large architecture firm, and I spec'd the plants to go into these commercial accounts, and I worked with architects, designers, and also the installation crew who put everything in. And that was a really fun time. It was also fun to live there. But after 6 years, I got the call of the wild, and it was time to head west. So now here is my Hatiora, which is developing into a beautiful shape, and I really love it. Oh, where was I? Oh yes, I moved to San Francisco, and I worked for a very large florist who had just bought a plant rental company. So I worked in the same, position. I spec'd plants to go into buildings and blah, blah, blah. But I also got into the event business too. So I spec'd plants and flowers to go into, like if there was a convention in town, or there was a big meeting or a big corporate party, that sort of thing. And we also did the Macy's Flower Show. So I worked on that quite a few years in San Francisco. And that's where I started to do the Marshall Fields Flower Show, both on State Street and at Water Tower. And those of you in Chicago or in the Chicago area know how beautiful the Marshall Fields store was. And it was a really, really big show with a lot of plants and a lot of flowers. So that was fun to do. So now is when I did kind of a switch on my feeling towards houseplants, because by this time I had put a lot of plants into public buildings, and I said, if I put one more Dracena in one more office, I'm going to scream. So I started my own business, and I started out doing commercial Christmas decorating, which I did for years, and then I also did garden design and garden maintenance. So I got away from houseplants a bit. I probably only had 4 plants in my home in San Francisco, and I just was like, oh, I just want to be outside the garden. I'm done with it. I didn't say I'm done with houseplants, but I said I've just had it. So that was at that time. So that lasted for about 13 years until, fast forward, I moved to Santa Barbara. So I sold my warehouse and I sold my business because as I was getting older, I wanted to get out of businesses that were so labor intensive and into one that wasn't. And I also wanted more sunshine. And Santa Barbara is the land of a lot of growers. There's a lot of flower growers there. There's a lot of plant growers there. So I got back into houseplants big time. And as I started to work my business into my new business from a product-based business, I was doing women's gardening accessories, into an informational business. I started to get into them even more. And at the time that I was living in Santa Barbara was the time that I wrote my short ebook. Well, I think it's like 90 pages, I think, or so. It's a houseplant care book. And it was based on my experiences of maintaining plants, being around houseplants a lot. And I just wanted to share those experiences with you. So I will leave the link to that book down below. It's also on our website, joyousgarden.com. So now we have aglaonema, also commonly called Chinese evergreen. And this is one of the red varieties. I just bought it as red, but there are many red varieties, but it's a beauty. So I now live in Tucson, as you all know, if you've watched any of my videos, and it is a tougher climate here. Santa Barbara is much more of an even temperature, but here it's colder. It's colder in the evenings. The days are gorgeous, but in the wintertime, and in the summer we are hot, hot, hot and dry. So I figure if I can grow houseplants here, I must be doing something right. But I'm really into them now because I'm blogging about them a lot, and I just really like them. I have a house that has a lot of light too, and I have quite a few of them. I'm not going to bring any of the big ones out because, you know, they're harder to haul out. So I just really enjoy having them, and as I grow them, I just want to share with you what I've learned about caring for them. So now for the ending, this is Pothos and Joy, and it needs to be transplanted, but I'm going to wait for at least a month for that. I have a whole bunch of houseplants I'm going to be transplanting, so I will do videos for you about those experiences. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I just wanted you to know what my experience with houseplants is. I'm not just pulling the things out of a hat. What I talk about is what I have experience with, and I have more houseplant care videos coming your way this year too. So if you're into houseplants, you want to check on the channel every once in a while, or better yet, subscribe, and then you'll know. But I have there's quite a few plants I haven't done videos on, and I also want to redo some of the older ones also. Oh, and here's my staghorn fern, which grows outside in the cooler months. In the warm months, I bring it in the house because it's just too hot here in Tucson. But I really love plants indoors and outdoors, but I have to curb my enthusiasm on it because it's just a lot to care for. And also, I travel a lot. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be buying anymore. Are you kidding? So thank you for joining me and my pothos and my other plants for this first video of 2019. I really appreciate you stopping by. And as I just said, I have a lot of videos coming your way this year. And I thank you for all your likes and your subscribes. I really appreciate them. Now let's get into our indoor gardens, because some of you might be in the snow. It is early January after all, and you're probably loving your houseplants being inside and make our world a more beautiful place. As always, I thank you so much for watching.